Мамочки, ще я хотіла поділитися. Я не знаю, на цьому тижні, до речі, в нас є група, ті нові, хто не знає, в нас є група, називається United Circle of Moms на Viber, якщо у вас когось ще там немає. Я вам висилала проповідь і хотіла запитати, чи хтось мав можливість послухати. It's such an amazing podcast. Хто слухав? Ніхто не слухав? You did, Zori did. On the way here. So you got double encouraged, plus me and plus with her. Дівчонки, чесно, я знаю Хайрі вже 1,5 роки. Я зустріла її, коли ми були на конвеншн. І я сиділа, тримаючи на руках третю. У нас 4 діток в нашій сім'ї. У нас 5 and under, всі 4. So я знаю, як ви переживаєте. Я чесно розумію вас. Розумію, коли ви не спите, розумію, якщо переживаєте в лікарні, або переживаєте, зубки лізуть, радієте першим зубкам. Немає сьогодні мами. Ми з вами плачемо, коли ви не спите, ми разом з вами переживаємо, коли трудності приходять. Ми знаємо, що це таке бути материнством, що це таке. І я хотіла би просто вам, як мамі, як самій ближчій людині сказати, щоб чесно, щоб ми насолоджувалися. Я говорю ми, тому що я сама вчуся. Я сама проходжу з вами шлях материнства, щоб ми насолоджувалися. Дивіться, пройшло вже 5 років, в нашому служінні буде в ноябрі. І я, вертаючись назад, особисто я хочу згадувати наші моменти, що ми насолоджувалися, що ми не тратили просто час впусту, що ми не тратили час на телефонах, що ми не тратили його з іншими подругами, що ми інвестували в наших дітей. І хочу вам сказати, щоб ми не думали і не жаліли себе. Я собі повторюю, мамочки, коли ти встаєш зранку, я жертва, о, я така бідна, о, діти з мене витягують. Ні, давайте ми це приймемо, дар материнства, як дійсно покликання від Бога. Що це є материнство. Я задаю кожен раз собі це питання. Не питаю там Джоніка, зараз таки в нього до 2 років, то хто знає, що ти хочеш від мене, а запитай себе, чим я можу тобі послужити, чим я можу тобі віддати, що я можу тобі віддати. Пройде час, як розказувала Хайді, 7-10 років, і він вже graduating from high school, а 10 років назад йому було всього лиш, він був маленький. І вона згадує цей час як прекрасний час, коли вона говорила дитині, коли вона інвестувала. Вона з ним, мені зараз 3,5-4 роки Соломіта задає самі питання, коли я готуюсь, і мозг наш каже, Соломітка, ну не запитуй питання. І я зупиняю себе на мислі. Ні, запитуй. Вона питає, мам, ну коли вже прийде Ісус? Ну я можу взяти свого медведика, хто знає, в неї є такий favorite мімі, який вона ходить постійно. Чи можу я взяти з ним на небо? І от різні питання, і ти набираєшся мудрості і сили відповідати їм. Тому все буде класно. Мені що дуже сподобалося, що говорила Хайді. Вона каже, коли нам тяжко, коли ми кажеться, що вже все, я вже на істощенні. Дайте Богу місце, щоб Він прославився у вашій слабості. In our weaknesses, дайте, щоб God's strength is found in our weaknesses. Божа слава, Божа сила, вона проявляється в наших слабостях. Коли ми думаємо, що вже все, дайте цьому Богу прославитися, Богу возвеличитися. Ви побачите, що дійсно, я ніколи не думала, що в мене буде 4 дітей. Навіть мій Руслан каже, у нас чоловік з сім'ї там, де 2, каже, я не думав, що в нас так буде багато. І я дивлюся, і я так вдячна Богу, що вони в нас є. Це благословіння, коли ми їх ложимо спадки, коли ми над ними молимося, благословляємо їх. Слова ваші мами мають велику силу. Слова encouraging, слова благословіння, слова підтримки. Соломіта там щось намалювала, сонечко, і там ще щось. Я кажу, вау, яке красиво. І для неї це вона дивиться на мене, невже дійсно так гарно. Заохочуйте діток, говоріть з ними, запитуйте. Я писала, але вже бачу, що нічого тут не говорю, що писала. Прослухавши ту проповідь Хайрі, і думаю, все, зараз буде, все класно, дітки ляжуть спати. І тут, як ніколи, Джонік просто не засипає. Ну, просто не засипає. Джоню рік і 8 нашому. І в нас є 2-month-old, 2 місяці ще. Не засипає, плаче. І ви знаєте, дівчонки, я вам чесно скажу, просто прийшла така Божий мир. Я взяла Джона, ми ходили з ним. Я не знала, що він хоче. Я чесно не знала. Вроді би нічого не болить, температурки немає. Я взяла його на руки, і ми ходили з ним. І я просто з ним молилася. Прийшов такий, знаєте, коли такий нервозний, ну чого ти не спиш, ну чого ти не засипаєш, я так хочу спати, я замучена. Прийшла сила Божа, прийшов мир. прийшла така ще більше любові, хоча я завжди прошу, Боже, дай мені любові. Я не знала, як можна розділити на 4. Але Господь дає, Бог робить великі чудеса в наших материнстві. І ми з ним молилися, і він заснув, він ме рукою по 10 разів. І я кажу, да. І скільки разів він мене кликав, стільки раз я. І чоловік мені каже, ну в тебе є терпіння. Я кажу, це просто дає Господь. Це просто дає Господь. Тому старайтеся не нервуватися. Я знаю, це тяжко. Я знаю, що воно не завжди так я описую. Але в той момент перестройте свій розум. Мені дуже подобається в притчах, коли ця жінка каже, дивіться в майбутнє з радістю. І я роздумувала над цими словами, думаю, що це означає? Це дивіться, ви як мами, коли будемо дивитися вперед, я інвестую в цю дитину, я в неї віддаю. Колись воно вернеться, повірте мені, повірте, я дивлюся на Євніку, який 5 років, і я бачу, що воно вертається. Мама, ти є сама найкраща, вчіть своїх діток. Коли вона це говорить, це не те, що я така хороша, це все із-за того, що Господь робить у нашому житті. Це все із-за того, що Він прославляється в таких мелочах. Дайте, я хочу це повторити ще раз, дайте Богу проявити свою силу в наших слабостях. Я також хочу, щоб ви взяли діток, я не знаю, які у вас різні віки, запитуйте в них, що їм подобається. І я для себе роблю це постійно. Говорити більше дітям так, чим ні. Це так тяжко. От ви попробуйте. Я вам челенджі, більше говоріть да, чим ні. Наприклад, вона там питає, мам, можна ми зробимо смуді? Ні, не можна. А потім я зупиняю собі на місці. Чому не можна? Тому що це вигодно мені зараз, в цей момент, не робити її, не тратити, не чистити всі фрукти, не збирати ту машинку. Це просто із-за нас вигодно. І я опять себе зупиняю на мислі. Я зараз служу. Я не жертва. Ні, я не то, що я така бідна. Служу, я маю на увазі любов'ю. Служу із-за любові, за цього покликання, що Бог дає. Так що запитуйте в дітям, що їм подобається. Дівчонки, ви не повірите, які діти згадують моменти самі класні. Повірте, я не вчора, а коли готуючись, я спеціально їх запитала Соломіти, в Євнічки. Кажу, що вам саме більше понравилось мамі? І ви не повірите, я пам'ятаю, ми пішли гуляти з ними. Я їм купила рейнбоутс, 2 такі однакові, розові, і ми йдемо, і така калюжа велика. І я думаю, тільки не калюжа. І ви догадуєтеся, що сталося. Вони почали пригати, скакали, вони раділи, вони були всі мокрі. І я так стою і дивлюсь на них, і думаю, Боже, це ж дитинство. Я забираю в дітей радості дитинства. І вони насолодилися, я їх переділа, мене заболіли, слава Богу. Все було класно. І вони згадують моменти, дівчонки купили нове плаття і туфлі. Євніка вже, бачу, виходить, модниця, мам, дивись, яка я красива. І що? Ну, зніми, це ж тільки я купила. І я зупиняю себе на мислі, ні, дай дитині насолодитися дитинством. І вони грали, і я просто наслаждалась. Не знаю, дівчонки, де то взялось терпіння, але воно було. Я не говорю, що балувати дітей, я не говорю, що ми їх не виховуємо, що не бути строгими. Всьому має бути баланс, у всьому має бути міри. Але запитайте в них, що тобі подобається робити з мамою. Вони згадають речі, повірте, вони не згадували, що мам, так чисто було, так класно, що ти помила пол, так класно, що у нас кофточки складені. Взагалі вони за це не запитували. Євніка з Соломітою, у нас такий великий бакс є з цими. Я хотіла підготувати, але думаю, ладно. Фотографії з олівчиками, ці crayons такі. І вони сіли двоє і почали всі бумажки відривати, на пол порозкидали. І я вздихнула і просто дивилася за ними. Я кажу, мам, дивись, які чистенькі олівчики. Я така, да, я бачу, які чистенькі олівчики. Я їх, чесно, не просила убрати. Євніка взяла пилісосик. Мам, я зараз все приберу. Вона все поубирала. І я собі, колись у нас була, якщо ви згадуєте на Early Bird, у нас була Оксана Парфенюк. І вона дуже класну річ сказала, що коли дитина в моменті, коли вона грається, і до неї хтось приходить вище над нею, а ну убери. Яка реакція? Давайте ми себе, як мами, поставимо на дитину. Я тут таки маю, що вам любите робити? Ну ви, скажіть мені, будь ласка, в джимі займаєтесь бігати. Дайте, що ти робиш саме більше? Читаєш книжку. І тут приходить, дай сюди цю книжку, дай сюди, постав, і я тобі скажу, йди убирати. How would you feel? Як ви чувствуєте? Іди звідси, бігом. Так само дітки, давайте в них не забирати. Я їм кажу, дітки, у вас залишилося 5 хвилин, 3 хвилини, і це на playground. It helps. Таймер також дуже допомагає. І мені ще одну цитату я скажу і буду закінчувати з лекції подкаст Хайді. Вона сказала, що справжня радість, і я собі подумала, навіть source of energy, або наша енергія, що ми прокидаємося, вона залежить, або наш позитив, наш настрій, він не залежить від наших обставин. Чи це ти виспалась, чи ти не виспалася, чи ти випила каву, чи не випила каву. Наша радість не залежить від обставин. Наша радість, вона безпомилково, або очевидно, без сумніву, вона залежить від присутності Бога у нашому житті. Unremarkable sign of God's presence in our life. Вона це так чітко сказала, і Бог проговорив до мого серця. Наша радість залежить від присутності Бога. Не від обставин. Чи це треба чоловіка збирати, чи треба пакувати ланч діткам, не залежить від обставин. Я не говорю сміятися, ходити без причини, я взагалі за це не говорю. Я говорю радість Божа, радість Його, вона залежить від присутності Його в нашому домі, в нашому серці. Ми вас любимо, мамочки, чесно я вам скажу. Є мамочка, в якої зубчик виліз. Я вас поздравляю. Ми радіємо з вами. Ми благословляємо вас. Ми переживаємо з вами. Ірочка, congratulations. Вообще, ми любимо просто слідкувати за вами, що ви радієте. Я бачу, багато ви пишете, що це дійсно радість, що дітки благословіння, що це приємно. Це нелегко, дівчонки, це нелегко. Але знайте, що ми молимось за вас, наша команда, ми молимось. Ми хочемо, щоб ви знали, що ви можете звернутися. Якщо ти переживаєш трудності, якщо в тебе postpartum depression, чи в тебе anxiety, по-перше, звертайтесь до нас. По-друге, послухайте вчорашній подкаст, що я вислала. Обов'язково. Тим більше, що ви говорите по-англійськи. Це no excuses, you must. І купіть третю її книжку, Getting Strong Moms. It's encouraging. It's a very encouraging. Просто я хочу, щоб пройшло 5-7 років, дівчонки, ми зберемося з вами. І ми не жаліли. Оля казала, а я її не послухала. І це я не хочу, щоб коли ми предстанемо перед Богом, Танюшка, сядь ближче, ти так далеко сидиш. Коли ми предстанемо перед Богом, і ми скажемо, от ви знаєш, Ісус, було не мама знест, і так змінило життя. Ні, я хочу, щоб ми сказали, Бог, це все ти. Thank you, Jesus. It was all you. Це, що сказала Хайді. Це не то, що ми прочитали її книжку, і все, наше життя, материнство змінилось. Ні. It's all because of you, Jesus. And we give him glory, and we lay down, ми падаємо перед ним, і ми дякуємо йому. Тому сьогоднішній топик і всі топікс, які ми робимо, I am very excited. Today, first time, що в нас такий топик. And це все потрібно. Слухайте, прислухайтеся, вчіться, благословляйте, запитуйте нас, звертайтеся, ми вас любимо. God bless you all. And I would like to introduce our wonderful speaker, Kristen. Да, yes, you can go.
Thank you.
Ми залишимо в кінці 15 хвилин на питання-відповіді. Записуйте. У вас, в кого немає бумажки, у нас на 2 мовах, ми спеціально для вас потурбувалися. Хто не розуміє англійською, I'm just telling to grab the copies of the questions and answers. Кому не треба, підніміть руку, ми вам обов'язково принесемо. And God bless you, Kristen.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and this is truly one of my favorite topics to cover. I'm not sure if I just do this and it starts. Aha, look at that. So it says here, well, that we're talking about how to have a lifetime of age-appropriate conversations with your kids, and we are. It's going to get a little deeper than that in just a minute, but let me introduce myself to you. Some of you were here, I think it was a year ago, last spring, that I had the opportunity to come and share.
I'm sorry,
You cannot hear me?
Who do not understand, хто не розуміє англійську, у нас є переводчик, будь ласка, дайте нам знати. Окей? Вдівайте, включайте on. Okay. I just tell them the translation is going on.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you. So I was here a year ago, and so I had the opportunity to meet many of you then. But my name is Kristen Crichton, and I am a marriage family therapist, and I also have just the pleasure of teaching at William Jessup University, if you guys are familiar with the Christian college up in Rockland. And I teach marriage and family and counseling skills, and have taught child development, human sexuality, things of this sort. And really having the opportunity to speak to parents, to speak to moms like you is one of my favorite things to do, because my hope is that if I can help equip you to be healthier parents and to raise healthier kids, they won't end up in my office, my therapy office, when they're older, right? And hopefully we can help them avoid some of the things that we ourselves are dealing with. So we're going to get, like I said, a little bit more personal. We're not just going to talk about how to have age-appropriate conversations with your kids, but we're going to talk about how to talk to your kids about sex before everyone else does. Now, some of you are sitting here. I know there was a mama sitting with a month-old baby, right? And you're thinking, I don't need this yet. My child is a month old, right? Or 5 months old, or 3 years old. And you know, don't we need to wait a little longer until they can at least speak, maybe, to start this conversation? Shockingly, for some of you, you'll find that you've actually, you've gotten behind already. You should have started the moment they were born, is what you'll learn. And that really is about teaching you how to be comfortable with this topic and the topic of your children's sexuality. So let me tell you a little story for a moment first. I want you to imagine the day that your now husband, I'm assuming, came to you to propose. And let's just pretend that he held in his hand a nicely wrapped gift. At least it appeared to be nicely wrapped as he got down on his knee. And he held this gift out to you. And he said, will you be my wife? Will you give me the pleasure of, becoming my wife? Will you marry me? And you took the gift out of his hands, and you beaming, excited. And as you looked at it, though, you were a little confused because the paper was torn in a couple of spots. And you said, honey, what's going on? It's, the wrapping paper is a little torn. And he said, oh, some people were just curious about what was inside, so I let them take a peek. But don't worry. And as you turn the box over, you notice that the tape looks like it's been used a couple of times, and the paper's kind of wrinkled, and you laughingly say, oh, it looks as though this has been rewrapped. And he said, well, yeah, I did let a couple of people open it up, but I wrapped it back up. It's still just as good, right? And you're thinking, oh, okay, this is fine. I'm still excited. And so you unwrap it, and then you open up the box, and you see a big sparkly diamond, and you pull it out, only it's not so sparkly. In fact, it looks like it needs to be cleaned. It's just got some crud in there, and you're going, thank you, and he said, oh, well, I did let a couple of my ex-girlfriends try it on, and one wore it for a little bit, but don't worry, it didn't mean anything, right? But this is for you. I saved it just for you. Would it feel very special? Not at all, right? None of us would want to receive such a gift. And the truth is, none of us would want for our children to give such a tattered gift on their wedding day, right? To their husband or their wife. We work so tirelessly to make sure that their weddings are perfect, right? In fact, some of you who have daughters, how many of you have daughters, have already told your husbands we need to start saving right now for their weddings? Did any of you start a wedding fund yet? Just admit it. Anyone? No, not quite yet. But we know how expensive it is to give a girl the wedding of her dreams, right? So we spend their lifetime imagining this wedding. But how much time are you actually spending helping to invest in your child being able to give the gift of their purity? Silence, right? We have never really thought about that question. We've never really stopped and thought, oh, I have to think in advance about that. But purity really seems like an outdated word in today's society, right? And especially among our teenagers. The statistics are depressing, right? We know that maybe 75% of teenagers are going to have sex by the time they graduate high school. If they haven't had sex, they're going to be doing kind of everything but, another 10 to 15%, really, which leaves about 10% that stay chaste. And that leads to all kinds of issues, right? And it's concerning to us. It's alarming. So what do we hear from that? Well, what we know is that your child is going to have to be well prepared and extremely strong in order for them to be able to stay chaste and pure in this society in which they're growing up in. I mean, imagine how hard it was for you, and now it's worse, right? And unfortunately, we don't really have that option of locking our children up. And because sadly, the media sneaks into our homes, right? And so the message of our society is going to get in there some way or another. And what we know is really the media is not doing us a service. They're not our ally. Sex education in schools is certainly not our ally, right? So we certainly don't want to leave it to the schools to educate our kids. Some of you wait and hope that when they get into the youth group at church, somebody there will tell them something about it, right? I'm sure the youth leaders will go do a good job of it. But most churches are silent, maybe until they get to adolescence, and sadly, by then it's sometimes too late. So if we have no allies, we need to get a little perspective. You wouldn't want your kids learning all the wrong teachings about God for years and years, and then try and correct those erroneous lessons after the fact, right? So why do we let our kids learn about sexuality from everyone except us for years and years, and then try and correct all the wrong things that they've learned with one in-depth conversation when they turn 13? Right? That seems ridiculous, and yet it's what we were taught. It's what was modeled to us, if anything. And some of you, your parents never had that talk, right? You just had to figure it out as you went along. Some of you figured it out on your wedding night. The thing is, we are sexual from the moment of conception, really, from the moment of birth until death. And when I say that we're sexual, it means that our bodies are designed, like we're designed kind of fully sexual, right? When we are born, everything we need, it grows and develops, but it's all there. It's all responsive. And we're born in a way that we are receptive to things like touch and care and love. And those are all part of sexuality. And I want you to kind of understand that when I say sex, I don't just mean the act of sex, right? So we're sexual from birth until death. So doesn't it make sense then that our education should start at birth and continue, right? Continue until death. And really, most parents don't even consider having that talk until their kids are nearing or entering into puberty. And by then, you're working against that tide of misinformation. So what do you do to make a difference? Well, interestingly, there's research that's shown people that are experiencing consequences of sexual sin in their lives, they talk about how they really have a desire, they wish that they could go back into their childhood because that's where the damage was done. And most of them say that they really long to have been able to have had more conversations with their parents about sex growing up. That it was the deficits, the lack of conversation that gave opportunity for really bad seeds to be planted and never any weeds to be plucked, right? And so the seeds grew into things that were distorted and perverted instead of growing into exactly what God had intended for us. So we know that actually two of the most powerful predictors of whether or not a teenager will engage in sexual experimentation are, number one, whether or not they feel close to at least one parent. One, only one. That's great, right? You're like, okay, as long as I can connect with my kid, they're good. No, but there's two things. The second thing is that they are seriously committed to their faith. And now I did not say that you are seriously committed to their faith, although you need to be, certainly, right? And it's not that you're committed to your faith, although, again, you need to be. It's that they own it. They have to be able to own their faith. It has to have been theirs, right? So they need to have a close relationship with you, and really a close relationship with God. They need to know who they belong to, right? That is one of the greatest predictors of whether or not they will go in that wrong direction and make bad choices. So what's our greatest weapon? It's relationship. It's relationship with you and with God, and those two things, they really can't be separated, can they? So if we want our kids to experience safety in their relationship with us, we need to become what I like to call an askable parent. Askable, meaning they can approach me, they can come and talk to me about anything at any time, and I won't freak out. That's the hard part, right? The not freaking out part, the not, sitting there with that look on your face of alarm, like, what are you talking about? You did what? Or your friends are doing what? Right? We need to become unshakable so that we are approachable. And that's a really hard thing for us to do sometimes, right? So how do we do that? Well, that's what I'm going to work on with you today first, is we're going to get you to that place of how to become that askable parent. So before you begin a project, you really need to know what the goal is, right? So that's where we're going to start, is what is the goal of our communication with our kids? Now, some would say that our goal is protecting them, right? We want to protect them from becoming one of those statistics. And that's true, we do, right? But it's really more than that. So our desire for our kids is actually protecting, and it's preparing. So protecting our kids from the physical and emotional and spiritual damage that can result from their irresponsibility and inappropriate sexual choices, it is important. But we also want to prepare them to become adults who can have deep and meaningful marriages that are filled with spiritual and sexual and emotional intimacy, and who can then go on to have loving and deep family relationships and friendships, right? Isn't that really what we want? It's not just that we want them to not have sex. No, that's only a piece of it. We want them to become something, right? We want something more for them, perhaps more than we ourselves knew how to build. We want to help them do that. That's our goal. So sex education is about preparing them, which is so different from how we have tended to think about it. So it's really about two things. It's about protecting and preparing. It's about preparing our kids to give the gift of sex rightly. Preparing them to be able to love and trust and believe enough to commit their whole selves and their whole futures to their spouses. And when we do this, we also protect them. We have to give them, there's a goal, there's a finish line, right? There is something worth holding on for. And it is marvelous, right? And I'm not just talking about the act of sex, although that can be wonderful, awkward at first and messy and really weird, right? But ultimately wonderful, right? I'm talking about the finish line is a marriage that enriches and builds and glorifies God, right? That's the goal. So when you save yourself, when you make decisions today to protect yourself, you're doing it with that goal in mind. It's kind of like, when you're training for a race, it's like not eating the donut right before you cross the starting line. I don't want to eat the donut. It's going to ruin my race and my ability to get across that finish line. It's helping our kids understand, delay gratification because there's something better later. Right? That's our goal. So what's the greatest enemy then to this goal? Well, we could say it's the world and its influence, and that would be partly true, but actually the greatest enemy is silence. Yours. The greatest enemy to sexual wholeness is silence. And it's because of this silence that our children, they develop a sense of shame and of guilt and of awkwardness and an embarrassment around the topic of sex and sexuality, and they won't go there. They will not talk to you about it because they're getting a message from you through your lack of communication that this is something they can't talk about with you, right? That you feel awkward about it, therefore it's bad. So when they have their questions, where are they going to go? Well, it's convenient. They have this little thing in their pockets usually. They can just Google it, right? They can look it up, or they can ask one of their oh-so-helpful friends, or Cosmopolitan magazine will give them some great answers, right? Because of our silence. Silence is one of the tools that Satan uses to prevent people from making healthy sexual choices. It's so interesting to me how many people are even afraid to have conversations about sexual boundaries as adults when they're dating. I can't talk to him about that. I can't talk to her about that. I'm sorry, if you can't talk about it, you probably aren't ready to be dating, right? And so what happens is people slide into making decisions that they shouldn't have made because they haven't set those boundaries clearly. Do you see how silence does the damage? So sexual shame and embarrassment is a problem if it keeps us from communicating with each other the fact that sex is a God-given and joyful experience between a husband and wife. That should be our primary message to our kids, right? Is that God has an intention for this, and it's a wonderful thing, and there should be no shame around that. And that's going to require some shifting in your brain in order to really sell that message, right? Because you haven't received that message. So one of the best gifts is being willing to talk to your kids. I hope that you walk away today realizing that you need to make a commitment to having a lifetime of conversations with your kids, and that you'll make the most of every opportunity to do so. So one of those greatest gifts is to be willing to talk, even when it comes to talking about yourself and your own questions and your own struggles and even your own mistakes at appropriate times, right? Even your own choices, and why sometimes you feel really anxious about some topics for them because of your own baggage, really. But most parents are saying too little, too late. They're waiting till their kids ask the questions before they provide an answer. But by the time they're asking, they're probably already getting misinformation, right? My own kids would tell me all the time, because I started the education for them early, and they would come home from school telling me how sad it was in first grade and second grade about how their friends didn't understand things about sex. And they would learn things from videos they would watch, movies or music videos, and the things that they would be talking about on the playground. And my kids said, "It's so sad, Mom, that they don't understand what God created sex for." And I said, "Yeah, it is, isn't it? But it's not your job to tell them." We made that clear, right? My kids, I had to make sure they understood their job was not to be sex educators. Whew, I could get in a lot of trouble at school for that one. So we want to be aware of those teachable moments. And when I say that, I mean things like this. So imagine that there's a woman that she's going to the mall with her kids, and her kids are 4 and 10 and 15. She spread them out pretty wide. Okay, so they're walking through the mall, and they pass by a woman who is clearly very, very pregnant and ready to burst, right? And the 4-year-old, as the way they often do, says very loudly, "Mom, look at that lady. She's so fat. Look at her. She's so fat. She's so big. Mom, why is she so big?" And Mom says, "Shh, shh, don't say that," and shushes the child, and they continue walking, right? And then they walk by Victoria's Secret, which is, known for modesty in their displays, right, in the front of the store. And the 10-year-old boy walks by the store and does a double take and says, "Mom, why are those ladies standing there in their underwear," right? And Mom says, just don't look, keep going, just let's go this way, right? And then they stop by the store, the music store, and the son wants to look through, or the game store, right? The son wants to look through the latest video games, and Mom finds him over, and he's in that area where he's not supposed to be, right? And she picks up one of the games and sees that it says, whatever it says, NC-17 or whatever warning, mature audience. And she's like, "What are you doing? Put that down. You're not supposed to be looking at that." And off they go. Well, those were 3 moments that were lost. right? 3 teachable moments because of mom's feelings of shame and her awkwardness and her inability to really know how to approach that moment. She missed 3 opportunities to talk to kids about what God's design is. Sometimes it's not appropriate to have the conversation right there in the middle of the mall, but it is appropriate to say to the 4-year-old that's making the comment about the woman who's so fat, you know what, honey? She's not fat. She's actually pregnant. She's expecting a baby. And we can talk more about that when we get home. Right? Or to the 10-year-old who's walking by the store and saying, why are they in their underwear? To say, you know what, honey? That makes me feel awkward too. Do you know why? Because God has designed us and he's told us that we need to keep our bodies private, right? That there's parts of us that we save to share just with our husbands and wives. And so when we see something like that and it makes us feel awkward, it's a way of God telling us that he has a better plan, right? That we want to protect ourselves, that we want to save ourselves for something greater. And with that kid that's looking at these video games where there's sex and violence and these kind of things, to be able to say, honey, there's a reason that I don't want you watching that, because what you watch becomes embedded in your mind, and you begin to think in ways that aren't in line with who God is and what his plan is, right? And there's subtle messages in those videos about sex, right? And about violence that say it's okay and that everyone's doing it, and it desensitizes you. And I never want you to be desensitized to those things that don't represent God's plan, right? 3 conversations that could have happened that didn't happen simply because of awkwardness, because of silence. I want you to learn to become askable and available to your kids in those moments. Our kids need to know much more than about where babies come from and how to avoid having babies themselves, though. Mark Lasser says that I believe that one of our primary tasks as parents is to teach and model healthy male and female relationships, and to create a vision in our child's heart and minds for that rich and fully developed relationship that married people can enjoy. And one of the best ways to teach and model that is actually, this is groundbreaking for some of you, and your husbands will not thank me for this, talk to your kids as a couple and not just as individual parents. Now here's another mistake we've made. Throughout history, it has been determined somewhere a long time ago that when it comes to talking about sex, moms talk to girls and dads talk to boys, right? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Only here's the problem. When that daughter starts dating and gets engaged and then married, who is it she needs to know how to talk to about sexual things? Her husband. And you've just given her a message that, no, you only talk to girls about this, right? And she's losing the perspective of a man, right? Her daddy needs to be able to come in and talk about what it's like for him, what his experience is. He needs to tell her how she needs to expect to be valued and respected and treasured. He needs to show her that he can be comfortable having those conversations. Now, he doesn't have all the answers about her body. I mean, he can say, yeah, there's things I don't understand about women, and I'm still learning, and, you know, your mom and I talk about these things all the time. And you can do the same for your son. When you find him playing with himself in the bathroom, it's not that you're going to go, your turn, honey, this is your conversation, right? You can't, because what did you just do in that moment? You had an alarming face, right? And you went silent. And you just taught your son that what he's doing is bad and shameful, and he certainly cannot talk to you about it, about all the curious things that are going on in his brain and his body. You did a lot of damage in that moment, and you said only dad is available to have this conversation, right? So now, if dad's not home, you can say, honey, you know, let's wait and talk to dad about this. You're not in trouble, and you can address that. But together, we want to be a united front on these things, because that's far more powerful. So what are some more principles for healthy conversation? Well, the first one is to just listen to your kids, and especially listening for those hidden questions. I mean, kids are curious about things all the time, and they'll ask questions that are embedded in other questions, right? And sometimes we ignore part of it because we don't feel ready to answer that, right? Or we aren't sure that, did they really mean to ask that? And we decide, I'm not going to go there because I feel uncomfortable. Now, it's important that you don't make assumptions. One of my colleagues told me a story about this little 3-year-old who came up to his mom and said, "Mom, what are condoms?" And Mom went, "Where'd you hear that word?" "From Daddy." "When did you hear that word from Daddy?" "He was talking to the neighbor about condoms." And she said, "Okay, well," and she began to start, to go into like, how do I explain what a condom is? And then she stopped and she said, "Can you tell me more about that conversation that you heard with your daddy?" And he said, "Yeah, he and the neighbor were really mad because they said they're building condoms behind our neighborhood." And condominiums, right? Condominiums. So thankfully, she avoided a conversation that wasn't appropriate at that time by asking more questions, right? But sometimes when they say, "What's a condom?" right? It's because they heard it and they do want to understand it because someone at school mentioned it and they need information. And sometimes we can give limited information, but we always want to answer. We want to address their curiosity and thank them for coming to us with those questions, right? So listen. Emphasize positives. So meaning, emphasize the good things about sexuality. A lot of parents and a lot of even people in the church have made sex to be something bad and negative. Just don't do it. It's bad. It's evil, right? Avoid it until your wedding day. Then, what was once forbidden is now encouraged, right? That's the mindset on your wedding day. What was once forbidden is now encouraged. And really, it's been treated in many churches and many homes as though it's the thing to not do and not talk about. And then suddenly it's your wedding day and they're saying, "Go and enjoy." And you're going, wait, mixed message. How do I turn my brain? And now think of this as something good, right? So emphasize the positives. And never try and teach something when you're angry. So you catch your kid doing something uncomfortable. That's maybe not the moment to have the conversation if it really makes you upset. So it's better to just say, "Hey, I need you to come and let's do something else right now, and we'll have a conversation about this later," right? Because that anger, again, communicates a message that can lead to shame. We also don't want to put off the answer, though, forever. Well, we have to circle back. We have to come back. And that's where some of these resources, I have this big stack of books here. This book right here, Talking to Your Kids About Sex. This is one of the best things I can put in your hand, as well as how and when to tell your kids about sex. This one actually gives you like the words. It gives you, if you find your kid doing this, here's a sample dialogue you could have with them. So you catch them, you're upset, alarmed, but you put on your nice face, right? And you say, "We'll talk about this later. Why don't we go read a book right now?" And then later you sneak off into your bedroom with your husband and you flip over and you read, "Okay, what am I supposed to say right now?" And then you return with eloquent words to say, right? And you talk to them in a way that makes it sound as though you have known what to say all along. So don't think you have to know what to say, just know where to find what to say, right? But when you come and talk to your kids, don't force them to talk. You can force them to listen. You can say, "I need to share some things with you," but you don't want to force them into something awkward. And so they'll talk when they're ready, and you need to give them time to process. So just tell them, "I want to share some things with you." And use stories to do that. Stories are a great way to communicate with kids. And I'll share in a little bit a couple of these books that I love, The Squire and the Scroll and The Princess and the Kiss. These are books that are not about sex. They're about purity and integrity and things of this kind, right? So stories that help us to really reinforce the message behind all of this. So, and there's plenty of them, great children's books that you can be using to help them understand their value and what it is that God has for them. Be willing to tell your own story. That would probably be more so with older kids, right? You can talk about how, oh, when I was a kid on the playground, for example, for myself, kids, we would use the word humping because that's somebody's parents said that's what their dog was doing, and they used the word humping, right? And so that's what I was exposed to, was this idea that men and women get together and they hump, and I had no idea what it was. And we just knew that it was supposed to be something good, but it was also something bad. And so if I talk to my own kids, I can say, I know how confusing it was to not understand some of these things. And I'm glad that you came to me with questions, right? So I can share my own stories of not understanding and being curious and looking in the wrong places for answers. Use those teachable moments. I got a next slide here. Use the teachable moments. Talk to your kids together, like I already talked about. And then admit your mistakes. So when you have the bad reaction to them, admit it and offer understanding for theirs. Or, when you tell them, I'm not perfect, I, of course, want you to do things exactly what God has designed, but sometimes we deviate. Sin, distracts us. And there's always forgiveness. There's always redemption. That's the story of the cross, right? Is that we always can come back to the cross. We can always receive forgiveness. And we want our kids to understand that because, unfortunately, the world will pull some of them in the wrong directions. Okay, so now that we've talked about how to have that conversation and what the goal is, let's talk about content, right? You're wondering, okay, wait, I'm still here reeling that you're having this sex talk with me and you're saying I need to talk to my 1-month-old, right? So let's talk about what it is that we want to cover. So most parents, think that sex education is just about providing that information, the biological information, the, man and woman come together, etc. information, right? But really, above all else, sex education is about shaping their character, right? We want to develop kids who reflect God's character. And only then can they understand and express this gift of sexuality rightly. So our goal then is to shape their values and attitudes, their worldviews, provide them with the emotional strength that they're going to need to make godly decisions. What does that mean? You're asking them to go against the current. You're asking them to stand against what the world is selling, to trust you that there's something better, right? And you know that the world will persecute them for it. It will mock them for it. So you can't just say, go out there and say no. Have a nice life. You need to say, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Because everywhere you look, you're going to be getting a different message. Everywhere you go, people are going to pressure you. Everywhere you go. But I'm here, and I'm praying for you, and I'm rooting for you, and I'm here to help you, whatever it takes. And we need to surround you with other people that are doing that for you as well, right? So that emotional strength's important. And then we need to give them the skills for them to implement those good decisions that we want them to make. And most importantly, we need to understand that your child's behavior is going to spring from their heart. So that heart is formed by their personal relationships with and their devotion to God. So one of the most important things that we're going to do is to influence their spiritual growth. Their spiritual growth cannot be separated from their understanding of who they are as a sexual person, right? So part of sex education, you are discovering right now, is investing in them as a believer, helping to solidify their faith. That is part of sex education. Didn't realize it, right? You've already been doing it, some of you. You just didn't know it. So here's the thing. How your child responds to pressure to experiment with sex at 15 or view pornography at 13 will have less to do with the biology they know and more to do with their moral strength and character. So yes, I want you to teach them the biology of things and God's plan for things, but they need to have an integrity, right? That has to be developed in them or they will not be able to withstand that pressure. So the job of building character belongs first and foremost to you as a parent. That is another piece. We're going to build into their spiritual life. We're going to build into their character. And in doing so, we are helping them to be successful and to give that gift of sex rightly. Okay? So you're like, okay, well, I'm doing that too. I got some of that. I'm feeling a little bit better, right, as a parent. Okay. So you build character in a lot of ways, but when it comes to sex, the first task is to communicate that sex is more than biology. It's actually multidimensional. And the first dimension is the physical. So the physical is really where we're teaching our kids that sexual desire is a God-given part of our biology. I mean, as much as we would like to ignore it or pretend that it isn't there, God actually created in us a desire for one another, right? He did that to lead us to want to come, to procreate, to marry. That's why that desire is there. So he put it in us. He understands it, right? And so it's a natural part of a loving marriage. That desire isn't evil, but we have a responsibility to honor God with our bodies and to use that desire for only one person, our spouse. So we start with, here's the physical design. God gave it to us. Here's the goal, right, is to use it only with one person. The next dimension is emotional, and that is teaching our kids that healthy sexuality is more than just uniting our bodies. It's also a matter of ever-deepening intimacy. So parents have to model that vulnerability with each other and the intimacy in order to help model healthy sexuality. You can't separate the emotional from the physical. And I know many of you have experienced that, where you feel disconnected from your husband, and then he approaches you for sex, and you're like, what are you thinking, right? What are you thinking? I can't engage with you sexually when I don't feel connected to you emotionally. It feels as though it's a betrayal, right? Because it really is. Because God's intention is that the sex is an expression of what you're experiencing in the relationship in some ways, right? Of the unity and the emotional connection. But it's also relational. So we have to help our kids know how to build healthy friendships and teach them that friendship is perhaps one of the most important parts of marriage. Because the feelings of love and marriage, they ebb and flow, right? But it's the commitment to the friendship of marriage that helps us to last. So there's a relational component. It's enjoying each other. It's loving each other. It's feeling like we can talk to each other about anything. We want to help invest in that. We want to teach our kids to develop deep friendships so that they can have a deep and meaningful marriage and sex life later. Something that's better than what we see in the movies. That's just recreation. I don't know. That's a lie. It really is. The next dimension is personal, where we teach our kids how to be safe and deal with any wounds that are in their spirit, right? Because we know, many of us, that we carried wounds with us into our marital bed, and they have stayed with us ever since. There are things we should have dealt with, and we didn't. So we want to teach our kids to be responsible for dealing with that woundedness in their spirit and to resolve issues before they enter into marriage, because we don't want anything to get in the way of that connectedness, right? We don't want anything to distract or distort what God has intended. And then we have the spiritual element. So we need to help our kids understand that a marriage relationship is not just between a man and a woman. It's between a man and woman and God, right? I stand before God and say my vows. My vows are to my spouse and to God, saying this is how I will love you. I'm committing to God. I will love my spouse, right? So it's a unity experience. If the couple has only a physical connection to each other, then the relationship is doomed to failure. We have to integrate God and allow him to be a part of that physical experience. And physical intimacy and spiritual intimacy really go hand in hand. Again, if you and your husband are connecting to the Lord and serving him first and serving one another out of submission to God, then everything in the marriage is enhanced, right? So we want to teach our kids about that spiritual dimension. So we have those 5 dimensions that we're covering when we're communicating with our kids, when we're interacting with them. So let's look at what that means. What am I supposed to teach my kids? You keep saying, Kristen, come on, give me the information. Well, And first of all, let me just tell you one more thing before I tell you this, and that is that I have a lot of parents that say, okay, wait, I really am not wanting to talk about sex with my kids because they're afraid that if they tell them about sex that their kids will become sexual. But actually, research shows us that the less kids know about sex, the more likely they are to experiment with it. Not knowing increases the mystery. And we all know how we love a mystery, right? We are drawn toward solving something. So educating your kids, giving them information takes away the mystery and makes it just like, oh, that's pretty simple. I get it, right? So ages 0 to 3. First of all, we want to teach them basic biology. So there's a name for everything. This is one of the first mistakes that we as young parents make. Head, shoulders, knees. Head, shoulders, knees. We just skip right past, right? There's a belly button, and here's your thigh. I have your little thigh. And we're just going to ignore these parts. Or we'll give them a different name, right? Oh, there's your little wibbly wobbly. And parents don't, what are we doing? We're teaching kids that they should be ashamed of a certain part of their body because we don't give it a name or we ignore it altogether. So lesson number 1, ladies, be comfortable with the words penis and vagina, right? Like, be comfortable with the biological terms and use them as easily as you use the terms to describe you eat food, it goes down into your tummy, and yet you digest it, and after you're done digesting it, you poop it out, right? You tell them about that process so simply, they understand it. Why do we not talk about their, God's intention for the rest of their body, right? Why do we ignore this? I spoke at another mom's group this week, and it was just so funny because I had done this talk at that group a couple years ago, and she had been there. And she said, I had to share a story with you. She said, I was so proud of myself because I had already taught my son the word penis, right? And when you came, I thought, oh, I already do that. And so she said, I would use that easily and taught him what he had. And she said she had 2 sons. So she said one day, her son came up to her crying. This is when he was about 3 or 4, she said. And he said, Mommy, I can't have Jesus in my heart. And she said, why not, buddy? Because I don't have a heart. What do you mean you don't have a heart? And in that moment, she remembered. There was this day. She was in the shower with her 2 young sons. And son number 1, the older one, says, Mommy, I'm a boy, and I have a penis. She said, that's right, buddy. And he said, and my brother is a boy. He has a penis too. That's right, buddy. And she said, you have a penis, and you have a penis. And she said, and I have a great big heart. So her son, ever since, thought, boys have penises, girls have hearts. And then when he heard that Jesus is supposed to go in your heart, well, you can just imagine how confusing that must have been, right? Because she was comfortable with naming his parts, but not really comfortable drawing his attention to hers. So she's just like, let's just move up and talk about my heart. Okay, so ladies, do you understand how important it is that we use right terms? Okay, so the next thing we want to talk to our kids about is the personal and spiritual is their gender identity, that God made them special, made you a boy, made you a girl. And in fact, I want to make sure I take time to highlight these other books I brought here. So this is one series that I love, and it's God's Design for Sex. And so this first book was written for ages 3 to 5, and the next one 5 to 8. 8 to 11 and 11 to 14, and they talk about, this one's the story of me, and so it really goes and talks about how God designed you before you were born. He knew you, and that the child, grew inside of the mom, and answers questions about how I can breathe and why I have a belly button. And it even talks about a C-section. So if you have a C-section, it talks about how babies come out different ways. It talks about how we feed our babies from our breasts. And then it talks about, I have a penis and she has a vagina. God made you a boy like daddy, and your sister a girl like mommy. And it helps them to understand their design as boys and girls, and that it's a good thing. There's so much confusion out there in the world, right, about whether or not our sexuality is a good thing. And we want to give them a sense that God has designed you uniquely for a purpose. And that starts young. Help them to embrace that idea that I'm just like daddy, right? I'm a boy just like daddy, and that's a good thing. So you are unique. You are loved. We want them to feel that sense of being loved and valued. That's part of building into them that security that will help them set boundaries later, right? And then also that others are different. So teaching them early on to have respect for others and their boundaries. So authors Stan and Brenna Jones, that they authored this series here, they talk about that young kids can actually begin to develop a wondrous appreciation for God's splendid gift of sexuality by understanding some of the basics of human reproduction. It's important for young kids who are under 5 to understand that God joins men and women together, ideally husbands and wives, right, to make a baby. And they can learn about the miracle of a baby growing inside a mother's womb. Note I said womb, not tummy, because that's confusing, because we taught them about how you eat food and it digests in your belly and you poop it out. So if you also tell them your baby is growing in your belly, how do you think they think the baby comes out, right? No, God has designed an amazing place in our bodies that we need to not have shame around. We can call it what it is. It's a womb or a uterus, whatever term you want to use, right? And that God does something amazing in there that we can celebrate. And that they are birthed through the vagina. There's a purpose for that in our bodies. And it's part of its function. There shouldn't be a shame in that. And as kids get older, they can learn about the egg and the sperm and the way God designed the penis to come into the vagina, to bring them together to make that baby. And when we're not comfortable with that scientific reality, our kids won't be either. So if we can just talk to them very plainly, which I've done with my kids, and it's just a fact. It's just like teaching them about, their digestive system. It's teaching them about how their eyes and their ears work. It's teaching them about how their bodies function, right? There shouldn't be shame in that. In fact, it's something to celebrate, and when we feel awkward, that's giving Satan power over something that God designed, right? It's allowing him to place shame where there should be celebration. So, in the second book, it actually does a great job of walking you through that very thing. It talks about man and woman, and he brings them together, and it talks about the different parts of the boy's body. It gives more detail about them and about the girl's body, and then the body changing and what happens with that. And then it talks about the egg that is inside the woman, and then it says, where is it? Friends bring gifts to a wedding, and God has a special gift for new husbands and wives too. It's called sex. And God's rules say that only people who are married to each other should have sex. It's God's way of making families strong. And because they are married, their bodies belong to each other. They enjoy holding each other close. And when they lie close together, he can fit his penis into her vagina, and semen flows inside of her, and their bodies feel good all over. They want to be alone so they can think only of each other, and this is the way that babies are made. A husband can't make a baby by himself. A wife can't make a baby by herself. But God made their bodies fit perfectly together, and together they can make a baby. Very simple, right? It sounds very simple, and that's what we want for our kids, is a very simple introduction to God's message about, and his intentions for us. Okay, so once we've covered that biology, and it becomes the familiar for our kids, and some of you are feeling awkward. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 to 5. and 5 to 8. Sorry. So first one was 3 to 5, 5 to 8. I talked to both of my kids about sex, gave them this second book. We read it when they were about 5. And for both of them, it was an important answer to give then because of pregnant women within our family. And so answering those questions. And so their curiosity was there. And so they were ready. Are you? Okay. Okay, so the next thing, speaking of curiosity, the next stage we have is that of 4 to 9. I kind of crossed these over a little bit with the books, but curiosity comes into play here, right? They're very curious about their bodies, and there's a norm to that. They're exploring, and they want to know what this does. I was a lifeguard when I was a teenager, and I can tell you that every single little boy has a toy attached, they think, right? They walk around the pool when they have access, and they just think it's the best thing ever, right? It's normal. And girls, it's normal for them to have a curiosity, and actually it feels soothing, it feels good for them to explore. It's not sexual. So we want to not shame, there's no shame anyway, but they're not touching themselves because it's sexual, they're touching themselves simply because it's soothing or because it's there, right? And so we want to teach them boundaries around that. We want to teach them how to be healthy and how, for example, my daughter, she told me, Mommy, I touch myself when I'm trying to go to sleep because it helps me to feel good when I can't go to sleep, when she was like 4 years old. And so we talked about, so sometimes it's hard for you to sleep and that helps you feel calm. I understand that. That makes sense. What else can we do? What can we try? And so I wanted to give her other coping mechanisms, other ways of coping so that she would feel like that wasn't the only thing she could do. But I didn't shame her with that. I said, of course, I understand how that feels good. God made our bodies to feel good when they're touched like this. And I had an opportunity to talk to her about like germs, right? And things of that sort, how we want to keep that part of our body clean, and how sometimes there's things that can become habits that aren't good habits. And that if she's feeling anxious when she going to bed, let's talk about that instead, or pray about that, or have her, listen to some music or something else instead of just soothing herself that way. So it's an opportunity to talk about other options. We also really need to be talking to our kids about boundaries at this time. Because this is a time when, of course, the risk of sexual abuse is at its highest. And ladies, here's something that you can begin right away with your kids to protect them. And this is going to be hard for some of the grandmas in your life. Never force your child to give or receive a hug, a kiss, a love, be pulled onto a lap. Let them understand their bodies are their own, and they get to make a choice about who to share their bodies with and how. So one thing you can start early is giving your children a choice when they're greeting somebody, something like, would you like to, hear this, go say hi to grandma, and you can, or grandpa, you can give him a hug or a high five or a sweet hello, right, or shake his hand. So you can give choices. And so then children feel as though they need to be asked in order to, to allow someone to touch them, and how touch should be safe. How there's certain parts of their body that shouldn't be touched. And even to the point, I was talking with one of my colleagues the other day, her daughter's 3, and she was saying, at this point when I bathe her, I always ask her permission. I'll say, we need to wash your vagina now. Would you like to wash it, or would you like some help? Because that gives her daughter power and authority over her body. But she said, I realized that I wasn't doing that with her car seat. And the car seat has the strap that goes between the legs. And she's like, and then I just go and I just dig in there, right? And grab that car seat strap without thinking about it. And so she said, I started just saying, hey, honey, your car seat strap is trapped on between your legs. Would you like to get it out, or would you like me to get that? So again, it's helping the child be aware that there's never a time when it's okay for someone to just grab you, right? And we don't think about it, but we want to think about it. We want to give them that kind of respect. Because of that risk, again, sexual abuse tendencies are high. The likelihood between actually 8 and 12 is the time when they are most vulnerable to sexual abuse. You'd think it's younger, but usually we have a better eye on our younger kids. It's the ones that get a little older and we let them go over for those play dates or those sleepovers and those kind of things, right, where they're out of our view. And I don't want to freak you out. It just means that they're more vulnerable, and we need to give them more education about those boundaries. And many of you are afraid of the creepy old man down the street, when the highest risk of sexual abuse comes from an adolescent offender. 50% of offenders are adolescent, meaning it's that teenage brother who's curious about his own body, who has not been taught good boundaries, that is experimenting with your young child. That's what's more likely. It's more likely someone they know. So it's someone they're afraid of hurting, right? Of saying no to. So you want to teach them how to set those boundaries and without being afraid of hurting someone's feelings. And you want to teach them that they can always come to you, because most abuse lasts 4 years. Why? Because kids are afraid to tell. If your child has learned that you're safe and they can come to you with anything and they won't get in trouble and you will protect them, you will protect them from the potential of abuse continuing if it has begun. And by teaching them boundaries and what to do if, you can protect them from becoming a victim. Sadly, most kids who are victimized are those who don't know how to talk about their bodies, right? Who don't have the ability to set those boundaries. So we want to make sure that we educate them to protect them as well. So we also want to help them understand that in this age, that same-sex identification is really important, meaning to be able to identify what it means to be a man. I model myself after my dad, and that's important, that kids have somebody that I can look at and I can model myself after. And so that's going to be a really important part of their sexual development, is knowing what it means to be a man, having good role models for men and women in their lives. And so, like I said, there's great books that kind of cover that. We also want to help teach our kids just respect for other people's bodies and having boundaries around that. Interestingly, my daughter, because I talked to her just about how others need to ask permission and shouldn't touch her, it developed a couple opportunities for her to come and check things out with me. And one day she came to me and she said, "Mom, I need to ask you something. I need to tell you something. I think that somebody touched me inappropriately." And I, of course, am trying to, okay, well, tell me more about that. And she said, "Well, I was at church." And I'm like, at church, right? Panic. Okay. And she said, "It was during Sunday school." And again, even more panic, right? And she said, after the lesson, one of the teachers was a man, and I think his name was like Mr. Bob. She said, "Mr. Bob told us that we could come up and get a candy." And I'm thinking, oh, great. He lured her in with candy, right? And she said, so after we finished our papers, we all ran up to him to give them to him to get our candy. I said, okay, I'm listening. And she said, well, I was standing right in front of him, and then a bunch of kids pushed up against me, so his knee touched my vagina, Mommy, and I think that wasn't appropriate. And I said, well, that's right. It's good that you didn't. And, of course, after I'm like, phew, right? Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, I'm glad you were aware. That made you feel uncomfortable, right? And so thank you for talking to me about that. And it sounds like that happened accidentally, that he didn't choose to touch you, and that probably felt awkward for him as well if he recognized that. And so we talked about that, and it just made it easier, right? There was another point in time when I was able to have a conversation with my daughter. She had an older cousin. He was a teenager, tall guy that loved to throw the kids around, and they loved their cousin, right? So she'd always go running up to him, throw her arms around his waist, and jump up and down in excitement, right? So you can just imagine she's standing with her arms around his waist and jumping up and down, and he's going, like, backing up uncomfortably, because this is a little bit confusing and stimulating for him, and she's clueless, right? So talking to her about having respect for others' bodies and creating space, I helped her to, stop and look. Do you understand where your body is in relation to his and how that would feel uncomfortable? And I taught her to set some boundaries around how she interacts with others as well, right? So really casual and easy conversations, because we'd already set the stage. We'd already made our communication easy, right? Okay, so what else? The next one is, I already told you this, but really we want to make sure that we're communicating because kids are drawn to look for answers, right? So we want to reduce the mystery by giving them information. I already got this. I forgot about my slide about sexual abuse. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Ages 10 to 14. What are we talking about here? Well, first of all, we're talking about healthy sexuality, right? We want to give them a model, God's model for what is healthy sexuality, including, attraction to the opposite sex, a confusion that may exist about homosexuality because it's really being sold out there. My daughter goes to Bella Vista, and my son is at Carnegie. And at Carnegie, the biggest club on campus is the Rainbow Club, which celebrates, of course, homosexuality, right? The biggest club on campus. It's the most popular one there. And that is because that's so reflective of our culture, right? And so you want to teach your kids about, understanding this, how to interact with that, how to understand their own bodies. Something I tell parents all the time is, your children will experience some confusion if we don't help them to get that the world cannot tell them, the world can't be the author of their sexuality. And let me clarify. As women, we all walked into this room and we all looked at each other at some point, right? And you noticed other women and you thought, she looks so pretty today. I love that top on her. Oh, that's really flattering to her figure. We admire each other's bodies, right? Because we're pretty, right? We're good to look at. Our kids are being told that if you look at another woman and are attracted to her and find her attractive, that means something else entirely. They're told that means that they have a same-sex attraction. It's completely twisted, right? The other thing that they're told is that if your body responds to somebody when they touch you, that you must be, for example, if you are having a sleepover with your best girlfriend, two girls, and they, sharing a bed together, and they're snuggled up and telling secrets, and they're filled with all kinds of hormones and wonder, and suddenly their bodies are feeling all tingly as they're talking about things together. The world would tell them that those tingly feelings should be interpreted as attraction, and that you must be homosexual or bisexual. But I teach kids all the time, that's just your bodies are constantly firing. And you have somebody in close proximity to you who feels safe, you're probably going to fire. All the different parts of your brain and body are going to be engaged. That has nothing to do with who you are meant for, right? God has designed you to be with a man, and being with a safe woman and feeling secure and feeling loved does not make you homosexual, right? Like, there's confusion, and the world takes advantage of those things, and so we need to provide clarification at this age because they're going to be told otherwise if we don't provide that. We also want to teach them boundaries in dating, and kids are constantly taking things too far. We want to teach them how to communicate those boundaries to each other. I had this client, a teenage boy, really good-looking kid, and we talked all about boundaries and what he wanted in his relationship with his girlfriend, and he wanted to save sex for marriage. And he said, I don't like it. I don't want her to touch me. I don't want any petting. I don't want her to touch me anywhere. And so I said, you need to communicate that to her. That's very important, that when you have a boundary, you communicate it. So he did, and he was very proud of himself that he had told her, hey, I like to kiss you, I like to put my arms around you, but no petting, basically, no touching of the genitals. Well, he came into therapy one day, and he was livid, so angry. And I said, what happened? He said, you would not believe this. I said, well, tell me. He said, I went to the movies with my girlfriend the other day, and she was sitting next to me in the movie, and she had her hand on my thigh, and then she reached over, and she touched me. Can you believe it? He's like, we talked about this. And he was so upset and angry. And I said, what did you do? He's like, I took her hand and threw it back on her lap. And he's like, I may just break up with her. That's so disrespectful. And I just giggled with delight. You know, how often do you have this good-looking teenage guy that's like, hey, don't touch me there, right? But he had decided ahead of time what his boundaries were. He communicated them ahead of time. So in the moment, he wasn't tempted. Even, you know, he was incensed that she had not shown respect for him. But if he had not had that conversation in that moment, he would have just been led by his feelings, right? Ooh, that feels exciting. That feels good. Maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. And his plan would have gone right out the window. So teaching our kids how to have boundaries and how to talk about them with their significant other is really important. We also want to protect them in terms of their exposure to the internet and the media and these kind of things. I mean, my daughter tells me all the time how often it is that kids are exchanging sexting, right? So they're either describing things through their texting, or they're sending pictures or asking for pictures through the social media of each other, lewd pictures, right? It's part of the social exchange. And it infuriates her. She's like, I just drop everybody when, you know, if they even ask for something, she's like, she tells them off. Not like badly, but just like, this is ridiculous. You're not being respectful. And I love her courage. So we want to teach them what to do when this happens. I mean, sometimes they can't help it. They open up something on their phone and suddenly here's a picture of someone's penis. What do you do when that happens, right? What do you do? Who do you tell? And we also want to talk to them just about their normal development, but also help them understand what to expect with that development. Things like wet dreams. I have clients that nobody told them this was going to happen. Nobody told them that they would wake up and have an erection and have, you know, this kind of thing, and they're terrified. We need to educate our kids about this. We need to teach them about what to do with all those feelings inside of them and help them understand boundaries and around masturbation and lust and these kind of things and the dangers that are around that. And we need to talk to them about what to do. Like, how can I grow in my relationship with my girlfriend or boyfriend if we don't have sex? What do I do when my friends are pressuring me? If I mess up, then what? Like, we want to have these conversations and have them easily with our kids. And how far is too far? They need to have help finding that answer because they don't understand it. The answer I give comes from Song of Solomon, where the lover or the beloved goes wandering in the streets looking for her lover. And she tells the daughters of Jerusalem, do not awaken love before its time. Do not awaken love before its time. It's repeated over and over. And I read that and I think she's warning them. Don't get things started that you can't finish. Don't turn them on, right? Until the right time. And that button, that turn on button, is different for each body and each person. And we need to teach our kids to be aware of that. I had a friend in high school and he said, just holding hands with my girlfriend right now gets me way too distracted. I can't even do that right now because he was in such a hormonal place. And he honored that, right? Somebody else can kiss, somebody else can cuddle, somebody else can't, right? But we want to help them realize what those boundaries are and to communicate them and to respect those boundaries. And all the time helping them keep that goal in sight. What is it that God has for you? What is it that God has for you? And repeat how amazing it will be when and if they can hold on to and keep the goal in sight. We want to also clarify things for them. Like, you know, the world tells them that what sex is and what sex isn't. Bill Clinton says, I didn't have sex, right? The world kind of repeats that same message. I want my kids to understand it's all part of one big course, right? One big 3-course meal. It's all part of the same meal. So you can't just dabble and say you didn't partake of the meal. If you just ate the appetizers, you still had part of the meal, right? So help them to be understanding of that. Okay, and then also help them to be aware of how substances influence their choices. Later on, keep their goal in sight, have accountability in their life. teach them about forgiveness and healthy relationship choices, meaning, have them choose other people in their life who will help give feedback to them about the health of their relationship, because we can't see it when we're in it, right? And so keeping that line of communication open is most important. Finally, last reminders. Accurate and explicit messages are best. I think I've made that clear to you. Dress rehearsal. Practice what to say. Here's why. Our children, their brains are not yet developed. We know this, right? And even teenagers, even though they look like adults and they can reason like adults, they really can't reason like adults because their brains are not fully developed. The prefrontal cortex of their brain that helps with insight and foresight and hindsight, it's not connected yet. So how are they making decisions? With the feeling center of their brain, their amygdala is what they call it, which means they are responding to things emotionally rather than thinking through them in the moment. So if you can do a dress rehearsal with them and help them decide ahead of time what they're going to do, in the moment they won't be led by the feelings, like that young man I told you about. They will practice, they will do what they've practiced and what they've rehearsed because it's familiar. So if you've given them something to say, how to get out of a situation, they will use it. If you haven't practiced it, they can't access it. Make sense? So practicing with your kids what to say and do in any awkward situation is really important. From the very beginning, from, if a friend asks to see your private parts, what can you say or do? All the way up to if your girlfriend wants to do this and you don't want to, what can you say? And how to get out of it. So practice those things. Try and throw out your list of don'ts because those positive messages are more important. And then finally, make precious the kiss. Now, I say this because this book I want to reference, The Princess and the Kiss, it talks about a princess, of course, and she is given a gift when she's born, and it is a kiss. And it is kept by her parents for her in their safe care. And when she's grown, they come to her and they say, we have something special to give you. And they take her up to this very special room and they go, ta-da, here's the kiss kept under this glass, right, protected for you. And they tell her, God gave this gift to you on the day you were born because he loves you so dearly. And now the kiss is yours to keep or give away as you see fit. And they say, but use wisdom and save your kiss for the man you'll marry. Never part with it for the sake of a stranger. Now, I'm not trying to preach that you shouldn't kiss anyone till marriage, but some of you may believe that that is the best, and there's nothing bad about that idea, right? To protect as much as you can. But it's a great way to start with your kids, to start with this idea of what we're protecting. And then it teaches her, as she goes through, she begins to evaluate the health of each of these suitors that come along, and whether or not they are really, fitted for her. And finally, she meets a guy. Many men come, and she deems them not worthy of her kiss. And she talks with her mom one day, and she says, Mom, will I ever find a man so special that I will be able to give him my kiss? And her mom says, oh, yes, my dear, I think God will bring a husband to you. But if he does not, the kiss will be yours to treasure forever. And the princess took comfort in that thought, for she knew that God could be trusted, and she cherished the kiss with all that she had. And then guess what? She meets a commoner, and he is kind, and there was kindness in his manner, and he is humble, and he is kind, and he says, I have nothing except one thing I have. I have saved my kiss for all my life, for the one I would marry. It's precious. It makes me cry. And so, of course, they live happily ever after, and they have a little baby, and when the baby's born, they give that baby, a little kiss. So this kind of book, it just helps us to establish value and keep the goal in sight, right? And that's what we want to do with our kids. This one, The Squire and the Scroll, boys love it because it's all about battling and keeping the word of God in your heart to protect you against temptations. And so he battles with the sword of the Spirit, and he battles dragons, and it's awesome. And what I love about it is it came with a CD, and so I would play it. My son would play it over and over and over in his room. CD's gone now. And it was just reinforcing just these great messages. So make precious the kiss. So lot to think about and a lot to challenge yourself and your spouse with. I gave you some notes, I gave you some ideas, and I would encourage you towards some discussion. Let me go ahead and close in prayer, and I will ask for God's help in leading you through this. So, Lord, we thank you for your love for us. We thank you for what you've intended with our lives and how you created this gift of sexuality to image yourself, God. That you intended for us to save this and to enjoy this as your gift to us. And when we treasure it and protect it, it is a wonderful gift. But Lord, what you have created, Satan wants to destroy. And one of the ways he's trying to destroy this gift is he's trying to keep us quiet, and he's trying to distort the message. And so I pray that we would be bold, that we would be clear with our children, that we would educate them and influence them and encourage them and help them to see what it is that you have created for us and that it is good and worth saving, worth fighting for. Teach us as parents to come alongside of our children, to be askable parents. And Lord, protect the children that are represented by all the women in here today. Lord, protect their children from the influences of the world. And we just give them over to you and give our time to you. And we thank you and love you in your name. Amen. Olga, you were going to...
Yes. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Ми залишили 10 хвилин на питання-відповіді. Будь ласка, будьте відкриті, якщо в когось є питання-відповіді, готуйте. Ми зробимо фотографії. We're going to take pictures of the books to share with moms.
Oh, yes.
О, також в ваших бумажках, так що є, там всі є resources, ті, що є, вони всі там написані. Questions. Полина, would you like to come? Полина, которая переводила. Классно, хорошо переводила, понимали все, супер. Полиночка, поблагодарите Полине. Дорогая. У кого вопроси? Питання в кого є? Я не вірю, що у вас нема питань. Камон, така тема.
So you mentioned explaining what marriage is around the age of 4 or 5,
Intimacy in marriage, is that what you mean?
or just marriage,
Oh, no, sorry.
or intimacy in marriage. I guess my question is, my son is almost 5, but I tried to explain just marriage, not the intimacy.
He doesn't get it yet.
Not at all.
That's okay. You'll know.
So do I keep on explaining, or
No, if
just...
they don't understand yet, and you want to wait until they're at that place in their development where they can begin to understand. And so you can pull some of these books out and begin to read them and ask them some questions and see if they are understanding some of these books. What? And if they seem clueless, then it's not time yet. You can just continue to reinforce things about their bodies and who they are, and just continue that work, and continue to model for them healthy marriage, right?
Yeah.
And talk about the value of it. And
No,
then,
I was just preparing him because he's going to be a ring bearer in a wedding, and so I was going to explain to him, this is what a wedding is, and this is what happens. You know, they love each other, but, I mean, it was just over his head.
Yeah, the concept of marriage may be a little bit much for a 4-year-old, I think. Yeah. But he sees it between the two of you, right? So you can talk about how before you and your husband married, you lived separately with your families. And then because you loved each other and you wanted to create a family, and so you had a marriage and came together and told God and told your families and friends that you wanted to create a family and promised to be together forever. And that's how you created your family, right? So he may be able to get something like that.
Был вопрос о том, ребенку 5 лет, и услышал, как звонят колокола, да, что свадьба происходит, нет?
Как объяснить ребенку, что такое семейные ценности, что такое семья?
Что
Как
такое
объяснить
семья, что
ребенку,
такое,
когда
что такое
4
брак?
года, и он не совсем понимал.
Да,
Он
и-
будет rainbow, это маленький, который на свадьбе. Не flower girl, кольца носит.
Окей, да,
Да-да-да.
да. И вот она сказала, что, ну, может быть, ну, кроме того, что есть какие-то книги, может быть, он, ну, конечно, еще не готов понять весь концепт, но можете использовать свой собственный пример, что когда вы тоже встретились, сначала вы жили отдельно с родителями, потом вы встретились, потом вы там полюбили друг друга, поженились, и вот как бы на его уровне, насколько он может понять, объяснить, что же
Когда
такое.
ребенок готов будет,
Да,
да?
когда будет готов.
Еще еще не готов. Еще вопросы? Все было понятно и ясно.
Do you have a question? You look a little, no? Okay. Okay.
So when there's siblings that are a boy and a girl, right, and there's like curiosity between them, how do you handle that? And is it, like, for example, bath time? You know, at what age is it appropriate to start separating them? And how do you handle if there's things that happen between, you know, not happen, but curiosity
I
things?
just interpreted
Go
before
ahead.
you answer. Вопрос в том, что если в семье есть и мальчик, и девочка, и когда они начинают, у них любопытство к противоположному полу, что же делать, когда они, например, в ванной купаются, когда их разделять, или когда они там пытаются как-то общаться, да, с интересом друг к другу.
I always tell people that, you know, siblings seeing each other nude when they're very young helps them to understand. It can help to understand the differences in bodies and helps you to explain that. But there's a shift that occurs kind of around that age of 5 or so, where they begin to look at each other differently and they begin to make more comments and to be aware of one another's differences more. They are also more aware of ours. Some of you are comfortable being nude in front of your children, and some of you will know that you will remember the point in time when you started catching them staring at you in a way that felt very uncomfortable. You know, where it used to be that they would just walk right by you and not even notice that you were nude, right? When they become aware of their bodies and privacy, and when they begin to make comments often, that's probably when you want to emphasize the privacy and start to separate the bath times and separate you out when you're changing and those things.
Ответ был в том, что сначала, пока дети маленькие, они растут вместе, иногда даже они не особо обращают внимание на том, что у них что-то разное. Да? Обычно с 5 лет они уже начинают как-то больше на это смотреть, или, например, иногда, когда они маленькие, вы перед ними не совсем одетая, и они сначала не замечают, им как-то это не важно, а потом вы замечаете их взгляд, вдруг, окей, он на меня смотрит, что-то ему интересно. И вот как бы вот этот момент, когда уже время научить их, что существует что-то приватное, частное, и вот тогда уже разделять их, может быть, в ванной и делать какие-то границы.
Parts he remembers are, you know, like pisa popa, you know, like, and that's what he says, you know, like, that's all he wants to say, you know, like he just goes around the house saying those words, and I'm like, okay, what should I do in this case? Like, I try to tell him, yes, you have this, and you have a head, and you have arms, and you have shoulders, and like everything, but it seems like that's all he wants to say, and it feels really uncomfortable, especially when somebody comes over to our house.
It's normal. For some reason, they're very, especially young boys, they're very proud of them. And they just announce it all the time.
Да, то есть, когда мы дети маленькие, им объясняют, что у них есть и пися, и попа, да, то они, кроме того, что у них есть еще голова и ноги, помнят именно только это. И ходят, и ходят по квартире, и всем рассказывают. Да? Вот. И это нормально, и особенно маленькие мальчики, они очень этим гордятся.
So I think what you can do is it's teaching boundaries about where they can talk about those things and where they can't.
То есть это важно, наверное, как бы научить их границам, где они могут об этом говорить, а где они не должны это говорить.
So in your home, it may make you uncomfortable, but if it's just your family, you can allow that, but you can tell him, this is a word that's private that we only share about this body part because it's a private part when you're with our family. So when someone else is here, we don't talk about that in front of them. And you can learn to set the boundary.
And a 2-year-old will understand.
They begin to, by repetition. And not to shame them, just to say, remember, this part is your special private part, and we don't talk about our private parts when other people are around, right?
Просто научить, что это твоя личная часть, часть твоего тела, и когда другие люди, не семья, рядом с нами находятся, то мы об этом не говорим.
Other moms have found that by ignoring it, it also decreases.
Некоторые
So-
родители обращают внимание, что когда вы игнорируете, то это тоже уменьшает количество произнесений.
But I feel like the older brother, he kind of encourages that.
Oh, you didn't tell me about the
Старший
older
брат
brother.
тоже поддерживает его в этом.
Because
He's
the,
4.
yeah, the older brother may think it's funny, and so he's doing it to get the laugh of the older brother, right? So the 4-year-old can understand more of this, where you can talk to him about, I want to teach your brother about appropriate use of these words, and I need your help. I know you think it's funny, but, right? Like, you can give him the boundaries to help with the younger one, so he doesn't encourage it.
Ну, то есть научить, объяснить младшему, когда я хочу сейчас научить старшего, как бы строить свои границы, как я понимаю, что тебе нравится смешить его, потому что ему от этого весело, или наоборот, да? Вот. Ну, в общем, помогая обоим построить свои границы и научиться через это.
Я на русском спрошу. Sorry. Как реагировать, вот когда мальчик, ну вот у меня сейчас 8 месяцев мальчику, но я предполагаю, что как бы будет этот период, что надо будет как-то реагировать на то, когда он трогает вот свой писюнчик, вот, например, 2 года. Это надо одевать его постоянно, как бы не обращать внимания. То есть какая должна быть реакция родителей на вот, когда мальчик себя трогает?
Right now I have a baby, 8 months, he is a boy, but I know that later on when he grows, he's going to touch himself, his penis. And just how should I react? Should I just dress him up and not let him do that, or just let him do that? What should I do?
So, as I was saying, all boys do like to touch themselves. That's normal.
То есть, как я сказала, что мальчикам нравится себя там трогать, и это нормально.
We don't want to shame him for it or hit his hand away.
То есть мы не хотим пристыдить его или там руку его оттуда отшлепнуть.
Sometimes it's a matter of distraction, so you can put something else in their hand instead.
То есть иногда просто можно отвлечь что-то другое, занятие дать ему в руки.
If there's somebody that's around and he is going to go touch himself, you can hand him something, and that's just a redirect rather than shaming in that moment.
То есть, например, рядом какой-то другой посторонний человек, и у него рука туда полезла, то есть и вы просто даете ему с чем-то поиграть и перенаправляете его действия.
Просто у меня старшая дочь, почти 4, и как бы, ну вот мальчик растет. Вот, ну когда они будут видеть друг друга в этом, ну, то есть это надо как-то, ну как-то...
Она будет видеть, что он себя трогает.
Да, вот, как реагировать. И вот и иногда она как бы, ну сейчас как бы как у нее интерес, и типа подходит, тоже трогает, и как бы ей смешно. Ну то есть...
Like I have a daughter, she's 4, and so like when she's gonna see that, and sometimes herself she's gonna comes and she touch and she say like, it's funny for her. So like what should I do when they do that?
So
And-
the daughter touches the son, is what
No,
you're
no,
saying?
no. The daughter touched herself.
Oh, okay.
No,
The son. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So the son, and
So-
it's kind of funny for her.
Yeah, that's where we want to intervene and teach those boundaries, that it's not okay for anyone to touch you without permission. It's not okay for you to touch anyone else. And really, there's never a reason for you to touch anyone else, right? That we don't just do that even though we think it would be funny. That's something that's private. So we want to teach her that quickly.
Ну, то есть это все время научить ее, как бы, вот это, что это мы не трогаем частные места других людей, и есть границы. И вот это, что это не просто смешно, но мы себя не даем трогать, и других не трогаем.
Okay, thank you.
How old is he? Okay. So
Ребенку 3 года, он еще никакие вопросы не задавал. Что же делать? Просто посадить его и все ему выложить по полочкам или подождать, пока сам задаст вопросы? Как делать?
you don't wait till they ask because sometimes they don't know to ask, right? Go
Мы
ahead.
часто не ждем до момента, когда они спросят, потому что они не знают, как спросить.
But this book, this first one, is a great one to read every once in a while so that if it leads to questions for him, he knows he can come to you for answers.
Вот есть вот эта книжка, она как раз подходит по возрасту, и ее неплохо читать время от времени, и она как раз подводит под возможные вопросы, которые у него могут возникнуть, и тогда у вас будут ответы на эти вопросы.
It's also just having those conversations about, when you give him his bath, talking about his body and how God made him special. Just, he's a boy just like daddy, and that you're different. And, some of that education is important. Some of the boundary education is important. But I find that these books lead to future conversations. It's not always right away, but they start thinking, and then later, you remember how they said, and then they ask more questions.
И также она сказала, что это дает возможность ребенку понять, что к вам можно прийти, об этом поговорить. И вот как бы вы начинаете говорить о том, что вот ты мальчик, ты как папа, и вот ты отличаешься от девочек. И потихонечку, как бы по соответствии с возрастом, больше и больше информации, и где твои границы. И таким образом, готовя его в дальнейшем познавать больше.
They're asking what age to start. So, с какого возраста начинать уже, говорит. Я говорю, you share that you start from a very early, from birth. Not,
You start talking about their bodies, giving things the
bodies.
right names.
Начайте говорить о теле, о том, как называются части тела,
You start talking about the differences.
в чем разница между полами.
Those are things we start with.
То есть вот с этого мы
Готов?
начинаем.
How to understand or to see when your child is ready. Как увидеть, что ребенок уже готов к разговору, да? Мгм. Не было на улице. So, I heard the first when I was 6, and for me it was from the street. I heard it first on the street.
Right.
Первый раз услышала в 6 лет и на улице услышала.
My goal was that I wanted my children to know before they got into school
То есть моя цель была, чтобы мои дети узнали, прежде чем они пойдут в школу,
some of the basics,
какие-то основы.
enough to have a right idea, and also to know if they heard things at school, they could come and ask me, talk to me, check it to see if those things were accurate.
То есть
I wanted to open up conversation.
То есть какую-то основу, чтобы когда они пойдут в школу и услышат что-то там, чтобы они бы уже могли прийти ко мне, и они знали, что я открыта, что я могу ответить на вопросы, и что мы можем продолжить этот разговор. То есть знать, как бы, в чем основа, какие-то основы секса, прежде чем пошел в школу. Окей, значит, я могу прийти к маме, задать вопрос, если я вдруг услышу что-то по-другому, да?
The book does a good job, the first one, of talking about how our bodies are made differently, and God created them to come together to make a baby, a husband and wife, in a very special way.
Это в первой книге там очень хорошо объясняется, как вот Бог создал мужчину и женщину, как их тела созданы по-разному, и как Бог сводит их вместе, чтобы они могли как бы зачать, родить ребенка.
But it doesn't specifically say in the first book exactly how they come together. It just gives the idea that they are two puzzle pieces created to come together, and that it's a very special and process and a good thing.
You mean there is no sexual act explanation, like?
Yes.
То есть там нету как бы именно процесса самого, да, как бы сексуальный акт, да, объясняет. Просто что мужчина и женщина, они как две части пазла приходят друг к другу, и Бог их соединяет и совершает свое. творение.
I found that just by talking to my kids about the fact that it was meant for husbands and wives only, but that the world, there was people that they would meet that didn't do things God's way, and that sometimes would be confusing. So if they had questions about that they could talk to me, but not to go and tell those people that they were wrong.
То есть я хотела научить своих детей, что вот Бог создал, что эти отношения для брака, но мир делает это по-другому. И когда они увидят это, что происходит по-другому, они могут прийти ко мне, задать вопросы, но это не их задача пойти и сказать этим людям, что они делают это неправильно.
Kristen, quick question. Where can we buy those books or get those books? Де можна взяти ці книги?
The God's Design for Sex series I got on Amazon.
Амазоні.
These four books, I got them as a set on Amazon. God's Design for Sex.
Они йдуть на Амазоні, я накупила як комплект. Ми сфотографіруємо, обов'язково вишлемо вам, поділимось з вами.
I believe they're all available
All
on.
available. Just we need to know the right ones because there's a lot of it. And I was afraid, personally me, to buy it. What if they represent different views or
Right.
show the different views?
Jim Burns is another author.
Burns.
I can't remember what his series is called,
Да, я знаю.
but it's a good one.
Еще один был вопрос. There was one more question. So if when the boy grows up and he's get excited and it stands up, how do I tell him, or I tell him it's normal, he's excited, how he created, and like you say, not to shame, but what should I tell? That was a question from a mom.
Ребенок, мальчик, он уже достаточно, побольше вырос, да, у него произошло просто возбуждение, произошло, встал пенис, и что же ему делать? Что же я должна как мама ему сказать? Типа не стыдить его, но как к нему подойти и что ему сказать?
I'm assuming you're talking about a teenager,
Yes,
then, right?
That's
Teenager?
not always
You know,
teenagers.
Probably not a teenager. Little boy. Like a
Поменьше
growing up
ребенок,
one, I don't
не
know.
тинейджер.
Oh. Okay, so just, okay, I wasn't sure if you were saying an erection, like as in, so I think that, yes, just to normalize, tell them this sometimes happens, and that they don't have to be embarrassed about that, but that it's not something to show others either. It's private, right?
Что это иногда происходит, что это не надо этого стесняться, но это не надо всем показывать. Это твое личное.
And it's a way to engage your husband too, to kind of say, I don't have one, so I don't know what that's like, but Daddy can help you understand that.
И вот возможность привлечь мужа, сказать, что вот у меня такого нету, я не знаю, как это чувствуется, но мы можем попросить папу нам немножко объяснить.
У меня вопрос такой. Спикер говорил о том, что нужно называть интимные части своими именами биологическими. Я заметила, что в английском языке это делать намного проще, и оно более естественно. В русском и в украинском языке оно как-то звучит вульгарно, вроде бы как, и даже взрослые этого вслух не говорят. Если вы заметили, даже наша переводчик, она хорошо переводит, но она в этих местах говорит английское слово вместо русского.
По-русски тоже так же будет. По-русски пенис,
Окей,
просто
хорошо. Извините. Я, в общем, не к тому, чтобы вам придраться, но, в общем, вы понимаете, о чем я говорю. Наш язык, он, в общем, и культура такая, они даже не позволяют этого делать, да. Вот просто мне, я не знаю, или это вопрос к спикеру, или ко всем, может быть, какой вообще опыт в этом есть деле, как вообще к этому подойти?
Yeah, you're teaching about naming the parts by their own names, and in English language it's pretty easy because there is just so clear the word. In Russian, in Ukrainian, we have so many other ways to call that, and sometimes it's even the older people, they feel like it's vulgar to call that their real name, and maybe it's not only the question for you, but to the audience, how do they deal with that? Yeah, it's quite cultural,
I can understand that. Yes. Thank you for reminding
I
us
wanted
of
to
that.
Спасибо, что мне сказали, напомнили об
What
этом.
to do when kids are обзывают, когда ты писюнька там, или когда они
Sometimes kids they
спят.
call in names on someone. You're the penis. In Russian,
But in
they
Russian, it's a
would-
little different, Kristen.
yes.
It's the word.
They
the
use
wording
it
is
offensively.
Offensively,
Loves
yes.
Yes.
And
like you're
even
this
though mother
thing.
is explaining, you cannot say it. God created this beautiful. This is part of you beautifully, and you cannot pronounce or call her or she or he, the others. Когда вот деткам объясняю, что нельзя так называть, это некрасиво или.
Okay.
Sorry, Kristen. You were at
You
Russia.
could have told me this before I started.
Я не сказала об этом, прежде чем я начала, что это слово можно использовать и как ругательство, и как просто нормальное слово.
Do you have an
No,
answer?
quick question. I think the word you're talking about is like the pee-pee word. Pee-pee-pee-pee, yeah. But I think the penis for vagina? Ask the translator.
In Ukrainian, I don't know.
See,
but
I'm not even
по-русски это
sure.
вагина и пенис.
There, vagina, yeah, but I've never even heard that, and I can't imagine saying that in
Okay.
Russian. That sounds.
When you were
как
talking
по-украински.
when you were talking at the beginning, Olya, you talked in Russian. Were you speaking Russian?
In
or
Ukrainian.
And then every once in a while, you threw an English word in there. Can't you just use the English terms for in this respect? Because we made it easier.
Да, то есть, может быть, просто английские слова использовать, они более уважительные, простые, да? Да.
Oh, it's the same words?
Yes, it's...
По-українськи ваджайна буде піхва. Піхва. А цей, uterus, like where the babies, like womb, and it's, я ж переводила.
We're in it.
Матка. Матка. Да, я
This is probably the first time these
в
words
матке
have
всё
been
в
spoken
порядке,
in this
да.
room, aren't they? Isn't it? Right? Yeah, I don't have. I think you need to consult among yourselves
Я
and
думаю,
come
что
up with a
нужно
plan.
посоветоваться
We're
самим.
all going to do this.
Что
And
мы
then you
все будем
take,
говорить вот так.
then you take back the words, and
И-
all of you agree that we're
Да,
going
и отстоять это слово, и всем
to united.
в единстве.
Anyone else?
Кто-нибудь еще?
Good. Yes. Behind you.
Да, уже нужно, чтобы они вместе, ну, как бы, не были раздеты, брат и сестра. Вот, или separate room, вот, как бы, с какого возраста?
What age we should like separate them, like their room, so not let them see each other naked?
I think again they kind of will show you when they start becoming aware and desiring that privacy. They start turning away from each other because if you've taught them correctly about modesty, right, and these kind of things, then at some point they begin to be aware of their sibling and say, don't look at me. They turn and you want to create privacy. Some of you don't have the option of giving them separate rooms, but you can say, we're going to have you change in the bathroom, or we'll put a curtain up in your room for your privacy, or you create something to honor that.
Ну, то есть, если вы как бы их учите скромности и всему, то придет возраст, когда они уже сами будут себя некомфортно чувствовать. То есть вы говорите, что это ваши частные части тела, да, или ваши личные. То есть они уже сами начнут как бы отворачиваться, если они видят присутствие своего брата или сестры в комнате. Не у всех есть возможность дать им 2 комнаты, ну, хотя бы ведь окей, вы будете переодеваться в ванной или там какую-то занавеску повесить, чтобы у них была своя
Ну,
как бы
допустим,
территория.
купать вместе, вот, если брат и
Like
сестра.
bathe them together.
Oh, bathe them together. I would say once a kid is hitting that 5 or 6, that they would separate out.
Где-то
And
с
then as far as
5-6 лет.
changing in front of each other, kind of a similar time. And certainly you want to give them privacy as they're hitting that pre-puberty time. So ages, 10, 11, 12, by then absolutely, you want them to be changing separately and really have privacy.
Ну вот где-то с 5-6 лет, когда там вы перестаете их, может быть, купать, переодевать рядом друг с другом. Ну и особенно важно, конечно, когда вот перед вот этим периодом полового созревания, там от 10 лет и туда выше, там уже точно нужно разделить их.
Thank you.
Back of the room, there's a question.
Там в конце зала вопрос.
Ну вот у меня уже как бы постаршие детки, самый меньший, вот как раз ему было 5 лет. И я знаю даже по психологии, с 3 лет дети уже понимают разницу, ну, когда мальчик или девочка, то есть мужчина и женщина. И вот с 3 лет даже пишут, например, там в раздевалках, в бассейнах, везде, что обычно 3-4 года уже мальчик с мамой в раздевалку не идет. И, ну, примерно вот я смотрю, даже своих так детей учила, что 3 годика я уже понимаю, что он много чего понимает, или она много чего понимает. И у меня тоже дети до сих пор, как бы вот я говорю, что меньшему уже 5 лет, и девчонки себе делают без бам, да, вот эти вот, и он тоже хочет с ними. Я говорю, окей, нет проблем. Она одевает себе купальник, он трусы или шорты. И это нормально, что они вместе себе могут поиграться, в ванну открыты двери, я все слышу, как бы вижу. Но они одеты, и это нормально. Но я смотрю, меньше мой тоже. Он или в туалет идет, или переодеваться. Он даже от меня, он закрывает двери. Все, он даже там у них, ну, как бы эта кнопка такая, как ключ, есть локер, да. Он закрывается, кто бы ни постоял, я переодеваюсь, сюда не можно. И все, и это нормально. Где-то с 3 лет они уже прекрасно все понимают.
Like about starting from 3 years, they're already kind of really understanding the differences that even in their public places, like say pool or gym, you have those places where you change, and you can go inside with
Right.
with the boy or to the girls changing place of the girls, and right, however, she's having a 5-year-old дочка, да, son, and the older daughters, they are sometimes doing the bathing with all those bath balls and everything, and he wants to participate and so say, okay, get your girls, get your swimming suits, and
Yep.
he will get his short, and no problem, you can
Yeah.
play together. Because even himself, when he go to the restroom, he would turn put the lock on. He will feel like this is his privacy. This is
Yes.
his time.
Yes. Good idea.
Хорошая идея.
Okay.
Ще якісь є питання, Надюша, да? А поки я йду, мамочки, хто приніс перший раз і ви заповнили бумажку, будь ласка, віддайте нам, не забудьте забрати.
Ну, у меня не вопрос, то, что Оля говорит, с 3 лет. У меня племянник подошел к папе, тоже ему было 3 года, говорит, пап, я имею к тебе очень серьезный мужской разговор. Папа такой насторожился, говорит, окей, хорошо, ну, говорит, вот у меня есть писюн, да? Папа такой, ну, да. Папа, ну, у тебя же тоже есть писюн? Ну, такой, ну, да. Слушай, а я заметил, что у моей сестры нету такого, говорит, ну, да. Они, говорят, что попами писают.
My nephew came to see his dad, and he said, "Okay, Dad, I noticed that I have a penis." Well, yes. And you have a penis, yes. And my sister, she doesn't have it. Well, she's not. Well, then she's pee with her bottom, right? Well, no. So he's kind of been confused.
You had to explain before you were ready. Sometimes that happens, right?
Будьте готовы просто объяснить, да, иногда происходит.
І ще вопрос є, Сіпалата? О, це перший раз, що ви так всі не розбігаєтесь швидко. На жаль,
Leave 'em
час
out?
прийшов, і
Yeah.
ми вже молилися, ми вас благословляємо. Не забудьте віддати нам карточки. Якщо якісь питання, будь ласка, підходьте. Благословінь вам, мудрості, and good luck. Good luck.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I just said that we prayed, and
Did you just pray? Well,
no, I said, if there's no more questions, we are good to go.
Oh, okay.
Да, ми вам фотографії вишлем. На хто не в групі United Circle of Moms, или може я вишлю через персонально вам.